بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا باب نجاة الأمة ورحمة الله الواسعة غريب يا مظلوم عطشان كربلاء سيدي إن لم يجبك بدني عند استغاثتك أو لساني عند استنصارك فقد أجابك قلبي وسمعي وبصري ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. محمد وعجل فرجهم. السيدة العلوية المضحية والعالمة آمنة بنت الهدى الشهيدة الصدر is a figure within Islamic history that we all should be proud of, and a lady of great sacrifice that has written her name among those of the ulama and the shuhada. Sadly, if you were to ask many of the Muslims and the sisters, the brothers, can you name me, let's say, 5 of the most influential women within Islamic history? Or let's just say in broad history in general. Names like Nightingale will come, Rosa Parks will come, Joan of Arc will come. Mother Teresa will probably be in that discussion as well. But rarely do you see names from your own madhab, your own worldview, those who have literally etched history with their own blood for the sake of standing against oppression. You attend these majalis for the purpose of learning how to embody the principles of Imam al-Hussein, which is to never bend when it comes to injustice, to never compromise, to be unwavering. But when it comes to looking into this discussion of figures that embody this from the world of our dear sisters, ladies, we have heroes, but we have heroines as well. Sadly, you don't see this brought up and discussed. And the need and purpose to have this discussion is to showcase, before we discuss it to the sisters, to the brothers as well, that you have role models. You have people that you can look up to, that when we talk the talk, there are those who walked the walk as well. Secondly, this helps bridge the gap. It's important. And yes, we dedicate nights like these. Muharram, you can talk about anything. But why not look into the case where when my brother, my sister, my son, my daughter, when they need an example of all of this 14th century of legacy, of tashayyu', who can we showcase as an example of those we can genuinely be proud of? And an unorthodox example as well. At a time in which no one was interested in speaking out, it was better to be quiet. It was safer to be quiet. There rose a lady, and she came and she defied all norms. Sadly, if you were to ask many of our youth, can you tell me a thing or two about Al-Shahida Bint Al-Huda? Hawzat are named after her. What were some of the challenges in her lives? Why and where does she say she got her inspiration from? You're talking Habibi in Iraq in the 1970s. And what today things are challenging. 1970s under a dictator, and still you find people who are willing to rise, but they could be counted by their fingers as such. Such a discussion bridges the gap brothers and sisters, bridges the gap between the ma'soom and the everyday Joe Schmo. Because you look at yourself and you say, now you can tell me Sayyida Zainab, ma'sooma. You can tell me Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra, ma'sooma. You can tell me these names, al-Baneen, upright, from the awliya of Allah. But how am I to relate to this? Here's someone that can bridge the gap for you. You have many figures that you look up to, you people that you're proud of. But can you name just one or two? Let alone within Islamic history. That is why it is incumbent upon all of us to study the lessons of the shuhada. The shuhada are very important to learn from because you found someone that Allah has categorized as hayy. That's why we brought the ayah, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَاذَا أَمْوَاتٍ. Do not perceive those that have died in the way of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive. Let us look at this point of contention within Islamic history and see where the gap is bridged and showcase that even a sister can defy all norms and odds that constrain her. Even if you're in somewhere like Qadhimain, Baghdad, under the dictatorship of a ruthless regime, you can still stand upright, be a beacon of intellectuality, an alima fadila, and have the husn al-aqibah of the shahada in the way of Allah and Ahlul Bayt. Let us look into that after a lot salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At a time in which a lady was not even considered second-hand citizen. You've all heard of the tragedies and the crimes against humanity that someone like Saddam Hussein at-Tikriti laid out against those who defied him. He even made it very clear that even if you're an alim deen, I have no issue executing you. Such was the circumstance in those periods where you found the atmosphere tumultuous enough that no one would come out, no one would speak. And so why do you attend majalis if not when you learn about Imam Hussein saying no to Yazid, that in a time where I find myself in such a situation in the Yazid of my time, that it's worth speaking. The excuses are not even necessary. They're not even existing anymore. They are fictitious. Some might say my situation, and na'am, kullun ya'malu ala shakilatah. Everyone has their own role in life. I won't expect you to do the same thing that someone who has more resources is able to do. And one day the man comes to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is in Nahj al-Balagha, and he says to him after the battle of Jamal, the bloody battle of Jamal, of the camel in Basra, Iraq, he says, Ya Abul Hassan, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, having beaten and having won this war, but at what price? 10,000 people died. On one hand, the son-in-law of the Prophet and his cousin, on the other hand, the wife of the Prophet. And it was a war that was so unnecessary. The man asks Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, my brother would have loved to have been among us. He would have loved to have been with you and I. But he wasn't here. Ya Abul Hassan, is he in good condition? Is he safe on Yawm al-Qiyamah? Because he wasn't here. And you know how many of us would read and see what goes on in the world today, and you don't know what to do. And we got sick. Humanity got sick, so grossed when they would look at stories of children being massacred, when they would look at blockades, a siege, humanitarian crises going on. He's like, what can I do? So you want me to pick up my bags? That's not practical. Allah gave me a taklif. I have a family. I have needs. I'm starting my own life here. But wallah, my heart's with them. Do you know what Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said to this person who, when a war went on, and you have to ask yourself this question, when a war goes on, what can I do? My protest won't help. My demonstration won't help. But it's definitely a symbolic thing. But it's not going to change what happens on the ground. Imam Ali answers this for you. He asked him one question. In paraphrasing, he says, أَفَكَانَ قَلْبُهُ مَعَنَا. Was his heart with us? Was his heart at least among us? He says, Bala. Yes, it was. He says, then it's as if he was with us on the front line. That's what labbaik means. Labbaik means I'm always in your support. Labbaika ya Hussein. Labbaika ya Ali. That means I am always on your side. And for that reason, Ahlul Bayt see that you are among us. That's why we always recite, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum. فَنَفُوزَ فَوْزًا عظيمة. نقول يا ليتنا, how we wish we were with you, because we didn't have that tawfiq. Sahib al-Zaman also makes the same complaint, Ajjalullahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, in Ziyarat al-Nahiya al-Muqaddasa. He says, time did not allow me to aid you, and I was deprived of your nasr. And as a result, I will mourn you every eve and every night. And I will cry for you, badal al-dumu'i dama. I will shed blood instead of as I wasn't there for you. We weren't there. But where was your heart? That's what matters. And sometimes there are expressions to showcase where my heart is. That Instagram post, it's not going to go anywhere. La, it goes a long way. Why? It seals in history for the future that your heart was at least in the right place. Because if you could have done something, we know you would have. Because your heart was in the right place. Imam says to him, because his heart was with us, he was fighting first row among us. But his circumstances didn't allow him. But sometimes the circumstances are nonsensical. There are those who genuinely cannot aid. And so for that reason, they have to send their dua. And by the way, never undermine the power of dua. In this circumstance, you have a figure who showcases that, look, I as a lady, under a regime that is a dictator and a tyrannical totalitarian to the highest degree and proportion, watch how I will defy the gender norms of that time. And the gender norms of that time dictated that a woman cannot go to school. It's not in their interest to go. They have to stay back home and just live and aid in the house. And by the way, that is not a thing that you should look down upon. The most noble thing is to raise a family. I find it funny sometimes when you see certain movements that give a false pseudo understanding of what it truly means to be an honorable lady of society, that it's like the biggest shame to be a mom. It's the biggest honor to be a mom. So when you're 70, you're going to start regretting that those times all you cared about, Rahimallah al-Shaheed al-Allam al-Mutahhari. Ay wallah. He would say, Man lam yamtalik jamal al-fikr, yista'rad jamal al-just. He's like, he or she who doesn't have the beauty of thoughts, of intellectuality, begins to show the beauty of their body. They have nothing to give society except look at the size, look at the shape, look at the this. And value me for that. Tayyib ya haddi. When you clock your 50s and 60s and 70s, how are you going to preserve the beauty of the figure when you lack the beauty of intellectuality to offer? Is that where you anchor your value? That's a superficial way. Your value is in how you can raise a human to be upright. A child, a son, a grandchild. Well, those times will come and you're thinking, Ya Allah, I wasted a chance. That I lived my life like I was a teen until I died at the end. Now, this doesn't mean those who are not blessed with children, a family, that they've never optimally enjoyed life or fulfilled their purpose. You can fulfill your purpose. And in fact, this is some of the allegation that was laid against this honorable lady. Some might say, she's a scholar. But she's a scholar because, she wrote all these books. She's very intelligent. She wrote articles arguing against communism. A lady, Amina, in the 1960s and 70s, against communism and hedonism, and arguing for the favor of how Islam is the best way of life. In an intellectual, philosophical format, they would say, yeah, your husband helped you. Guess what? She never got married in her life. Is it behind every great man is an amazing woman? She was independent. Now, indeed, she comes from that family. Al-Sadr al-Kiram. Her cousin Sayyid Musa al-Sadr. Her brother Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. Her father Sayyid Haydar al-Sadr. Family, noble, contributing, intellectual, strong, brave. She is a product of that family tree, but she's her hard work. And this is a common idea that many people necessarily shouldn't embrace. That I give you credit because you are wife of. You are daughter of. You are mom of. Don't apply that. In Islam, you earn your respect through merit, not through marriage. وإلا, the wife of Nuh would be straight one-way ticket to Jannah. But Allah says, ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح and امرأة لوط. And the wife of Lut, because she's married to someone amazing, doesn't give her one-way ticket to Jannah. Allah judges you based on your own independent efforts. This lady doesn't use the excuses of society and says, Saddam says no intelligence, no contribution from a lady's part. And back then, there was the famous view of al-Madiyya and al-ilmaniyya and secularism, such that it was unpopular. It's hard to believe that in Iraq today. But back then, it was unpopular to be a full aba wearing lady. One of the most impressive articles I read in the last year was a sister who said, I decided to wear hijab. Why? Because I know by not embracing the modesty that I should embrace, and by the way, everyone's on their own journey. No one is here to judge. So people are so judgmental. But there are people that know their taklif. And they know, look, I know I'm violating, but I'll continue to do it because it's more convenient. This lady says that I don't want to go to a hell where Netanyahu is also going to be there. Let me fix up right now. Let me fix my act. If I'm going to go where he is, you see the masa'ib and you find it interesting. But genuinely, the ibtila'at that we saw, many people asked, Ya Allah, you can go one way if you're thought, why is this happening? I thought we're on the truth. Or you could say, subhanallah, that even if your apartment has been leveled, even if it's all rubble, and the fact you still pray in what was once your apartment, Salat al-Jama'ah, I have no excuse to miss my Salah from now on. Allahu Akbar. That I don't want to go to a destination where that riffraff lives in as well. Ya Allah, let me act up now. From trial came something that sprouted in the hearts of many people. Many of the sisters would know that there are so many of those who somehow they had an awakening. Many of the brothers would say that, Ya Allah, I had to get my act together. What happened on the news? Let them not win me. Let them not crush me. And let me be the example of, hey, you want to go after those who are upright? I'm in your own space. And I'm going to be defiant. I'll protest. What could the protest do? What could the Instagram reel do? What could the article? It shows my heart was in the right place. This lady, upright, born 1937. Coming from this family, the first thing she did when she saw that it was not the place of a woman to go and pursue an education was that she independently taught herself. Independent learner. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to go to university and get a degree after degree to be learned. How many riffraffs have PhDs and they have nothing to offer, nothing to show? A waste of time. Pick up a book and just study on your own. So many people's lives changes. Read works such as Thumma Ihtadayt or Then I Was Guided by Muhammad Tijani. If you feel your heart is soul searching, read his work. It's incredible. Translated into English. I even encourage you, read initial non-Muslim works. The biography of Malcolm X inspired so many people. Incredible work. Just read, that's all. Then expand. Some people say, Sayyidina, give me a good book of hadith I should read. I'm not going to encourage you to read Al-Kafi. That's too advanced. That's the work of the ulama. You can see some hadith that could be good for you, but not through Al-Kafi or Bihar or Wasail or Al-Wafi or Man La Yahdhuruhu Al-Faqih or Al-Istibsar or Tahdhib Al-Ahkam. I encourage you to read. This is in English. You're soul searching. You want motivation. If you can, write it down mentally. This is the only time you could take out your phone too. Read Ghurar al-Hikam of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. These are quotes by Imam Ali that are like the most beautiful gems you will ever read. Ghura, it's in English too. And just one day, every single day, pick one hadith. Just open it randomly. It's like that. It takes you not needing to know the context too. Just gems, pearls by Amir al-Mu'mineen, where he speaks about time, money, patience, effort. Baba, there's a hadith about the blessings of having good, neat handwriting. Beautiful handwriting. Al-khattu al-hasan yazidu al-rizq. And you just think about it the rest of the day. What does that mean? Ponder, pick up. That's how you know Amir al-Mu'mineen. Some might say, I want to read Nahj al-Balagha. Yes, but you're going to get to a letter Imam Ali sent to Malik al-Ashtar. And Imam Ali said to Ibn al-Tayhan. And you're like, who's this? Who's that? You're still on the journey. There are ways to begin. Read Ayatollah Muhammad Ray Shahri's Mizan who knows this one? Mizan al-Hikmah. Mizan al-Hikmah. He takes the hadiths from the Kafi, from the Tahdhib, from the Bihar, and he puts them into a book. These are the hadiths. Just look at the index. Don't even open. Look at the index. A hadith about how to deal with anxiety. Isn't that a beautiful solution? How to deal with anxiety, but from the lips of Al Muhammad, Allah. A hadith about, and you go to that chapter, And it's every hadith. When you're anxious, breathe. When you're anxious and you're standing, sit. When you're anxious and you're sitting, stand instead. Yani change your zone. This is the gems and pearls of wisdom. You can become learned. Amina Bint Al-Huda did so. She didn't just read though. She also began to write. And I encourage brothers and sisters, write ya ammi, write. Don't do so much and not project it to society. Zakatul, Ahlul Bayt would say, Zakatul ilmi nashruh. That the charity of knowledge is to disseminate it. What good is your knowledge if you just kept it here, bruv? Man paints a beautiful painting and decides after he finishes, he hides it. La, show it. Everyone needs to benefit. Learn something, tell it. What's even better is write it. Write it down. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen would say in the masjid of Kufa, who wants to buy ilm? Like, Ya Abul Hassan, does ilm get purchased? He says, yes, it's worth 2 dinar. It's like, how? He says, buy a pen and a paper. Write. That's how you purchase ilm. Because ilm will now be stored and it will never go away. She wrote novels. Don't undermine the power of storytelling. Novels. Fiction and non-fiction. She had a diary. And wallah, her mudhakkirat and her diary. Some of the most beautiful observations and reflections you will ever see. She wrote about aqa'id. She wrote about hijab, and she's attacking communism in this light as well. And boy, did she do a beautiful job. She has a beautiful quote. إِذَا قِيلَ عَنْكِ رَجْعِيَّةً. And they call you backwards because of your hijab. Tell them, I am the daughter of the Risala. I am the daughter of the message of Islam. This veil doesn't hold me back. It propels me forward. I can defy your norms and what you expect. Habibi, this is in 1970 Iraq. What feminism, what ultra pseudo movements. She's defying all norms in that culture. Iraqi culture is a very extremely conservative culture, as you all know, mashallah. But then there are times where it's unnecessary. There's no need to deny people their rights to breathe and have movement in life. She says, I don't care even if the government does that. I will show that I decide I am hurra. I decide what I do. Novel after novel she wrote until, with the blessing and the backing of her brother, the Marja' Din al-A'la, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Al-Sadr, she opened a madrasa, defying all odds, in Najaf al-Ashraf and in Kadhimain, Baghdad. You think she taught in that madrasa? She was the superintendent and principal of it. 2 schools called Madaris al-Zahra. In Iraq, you open a school, and it's an all-ladies school. At a time when women didn't even know how to read and write. She found this a tragedy. She taught herself Farsi, by the way. She taught herself Persian. She taught herself Arabic grammar and syntax. Later on, she studies under who? If you have a brother like Shaheed Muhammad Baqir Al-Sadr, she studies under him fiqh, usul, aqa'id, ilm al-kalam, al-jarh, al-ta'deel, hadith. And she takes all of that and she teaches the random Iraqiyya on the street, random Hajjiyya on the street. She looks at Bedouins, women who don't even know how to speak properly, and she says, you need to come because you are Bint Al-Risala. She would always use that term. And when she would write her books, you know what she would say? She would write it as 2 letters as the author. Alif Ha. Alif Ha. A-H. Amina Haidar. Until they said, Sayyida Alwiya, you need to have a pen name. I-H is confusing. She said, I don't want this to be known that I'm doing this for my own fame. I will give myself a title. Bint Al-Huda. She's impressed with that ideology. You are the daughter of guidance. Her name is Amina, but she didn't live in safety. She's called Bint Al-Huda, but she was guidance for many other people. And you're talking under Saddam. It's 1970s Iraq. And she still defied all odds and built 2, not 1, schools, Najaf and Kadhimain. But she's in Najaf. What's Kadhimain? She has to go once a week. She would go without a mahram too. She would take a taxi and she would go. She said, I am responsible. I have a taklif and I have a job. She had a job. She wrote books. She taught others and she never got married and she defied all these odds. And she taught women who were neglected, second-hand citizens. Today, don't ever say, brothers and sisters, that I am restricted and I am limited with the ni'mah that you have at the press of a button. By just reading it, what school did you go to? She would say, I went nowhere. What school did you go to? MashaAllah, after high school, after college, after this. And the complaints come all the time. Oh Allah, I never get a chance. I don't have an opportunity. My parents, a bit confining and restricting. You don't have excuses. Yes, sometimes people are unnecessary. Sah, I agree. I'm not saying you should never complain. No, you have the right to say, Ya Allah, that's not fair that's going on. How come I'm deprived just basic, common, mathalan, opportunities that everyone else has? If it's not violating your hijab, as a man, by the way, first, I have to talk to the brothers and then the sisters here. If it's not violating your hijab, because you also have modesty rules to keep in mind, go do what you like. So long as you don't defy Rabbil Alameen. One of our ulama would say, my promise to my wife when we got married is, look, all I want from you is this. Don't do anything haram and do whatever you like. And that's a marriage built on the taqwa of Allah. It just means Allah is always watching you and He's watching me. Don't ever do haram and I'm happy with whatever you want. That's a marriage built on the asas of ma'rifah of Allah. As-Sayyid Amin would go to Baghdad, super attentive, and come back and do the same thing where? In Najaf al-Ashraf. This got the attention of the dictator, the Yazid of that time. And guess what they did? From 1966 to 1972, she kept teaching and they shut the school down. No more. You have one option. You allow the school to merge the two schools because they became popular. There were women who finally started to read because of her, learning their sharia and aqeedah because of her. They said you have one option. You can merge this school to the Ministry of Education. But the Ministry of Education under Sdayyim is going to become hell. They'll influence their own curriculum. They'll add, people who went through the Ba'athist regime. Our parents will tell you that there was a pledge of allegiance towards Saddam and the loyalty pledge to death. She's like, I don't want that. We pledge allegiance, but to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. I don't want to include this in my curriculum. The curriculum had to include some of this nonsense and the brainwashing material. She refused. They said, if you refuse to do, you can keep it and you'll have a much bigger payment. But you work for the government now. She came basically from no riches and she refused it. She sold her dunya for her akhirah and she was left without purpose. And she would write in her diaries, and this date, 1972, I got shut down. And I felt no purpose in life if I'm not working. Look at this working, activism that she is so obsessed with. And she literally marked history with her own blood, because eventually she would find that her brother, the Shaheed, As-Sa'id, Ayatollah Al-Uzma, Sayyid Baqir Al-Sadr, would become another target to the Ba'athist regime. Now, I want you to pay attention. You hear about the rights of the wife, and you hear about the rights of your parents, and the rights of your daughters and sons. Rarely is it discussed the rights of your sibling, your sister. If you have a brother and you have a sister, and if you're a sister, you have a brother, there's rights between you two. You know what that right is? The haqq of your sister is that you are her backbone. Is that you, when you see her in trouble, you have to be the first to stand up for her. If she's going out and she's afraid because she's doing what she basically has to do to go to work, to go to school, and she has to take that train, 7 a.m. in her hijab, and these are hyenas looking right at her, go with her. You have to be what we say as zalama and go with your sister. Go and make sure she's safe, she's comfortable. Where are some of these guys? Where do they go? Wallah, some of them, they're very strong, they're very whatever, but they don't care sometimes. Akhi, if it's your cousin, if it's no one related, it's your Shia sister, don't abandon her alone. Skip. If she's your Sunni sister, doesn't matter. Skip. If she's a lady in distress, where are you? If the girl has her hijab pulled, you have to stand. Don't ask her, by the way, what's your madhab? Oh, sorry. The worst one. Who's your marja'? Get a life. Bruv, get a life. Taban, bruv, we learned it from you guys. It's brother, but What's your marja? Who cares? The Islamophobe doesn't differentiate. She just sees a Muslim. When the Quran is burnt, you have to stand like this with your fellow Muslim. Sunni, Shi'i, Sushi. Stand with them like this. Doesn't matter. That's my Quran. That's the unity that Al-Imam Sayyid Musa Al-Sadr spoke about. That even if you're Maroni Christian, even if you're Dirzi, even if you're Shi'i or Sunni, we all have a common purpose. And that is never, ever to humiliation. Her brother, look at when the roles are reversed. Her brother needs help now. Ayatollah Baqir al-Sadr. He was very vocal and critical against the Mal'un and Yazid of that era. And so what they did is they took him to jail in Baghdad. He's in Najaf. He was very much for the revolution, and that caused them much concern. Do you think she was going to sit there and watch her brother go to jail? She did something. The last time this happened was probably Sayyida Zainab in Sham, and I say it without exaggeration. She stood on the minbar in the Haram, and she rose and gave a public speech in the mid-1978. She gave a public speech. Ya Ahl al-Alam, your Imam has been taken to prison and you just sit there. She, as a result, publicly speaking, done demonstrations in Najaf. These demonstrations, attention reached all parts of the world that had muqallideen of the Sayyid. So in Bahrain, in Iran, in Lebanon, parts of Syria, in Kuwait, in Iraq, and in all the muhafadhat, they all did protests. One lady spoke out and gave a sermon inspired by the likes such as al-Banin and Sayyida Zainab. Why? Because if you ever thought Majlis al-Hussein is a male-dominated field, last I checked, the first to give Majlis al-Hussein was al-Banin, was Sayyida Zainab, was the Sayyida Sukaina. When they would return after Karbala in Medina and Munawwara, their first role was to let's inform people what happened in Ashura. You take that example, what is predominantly a male-dominated field, begun by women who spoke properly, and there's no shame in a lady being vocal in times of necessity and where there is great benefit, and in general where there is no haram at all. I ask you a question. Your favorite dua, hadith, al-Kisa, who narrates it? An man? An Fatima? An Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. Fatima al-Zahra had a disciple that was Jabir. Yani she had a student like him. Yani he would take the ilm from Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam. And she says and sees Jabir, this is the following narration. She had male students and who were disciples. Jabir bin Abdullah Ansari, who narrates the most profound of the narrations and ahadith found in Bukhari and found in our resources as well. How does it begin? Fatima al-Zahra teaches it to her student, Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. Likewise, Sayyida Amina spoke in the Haram and she started riots. And do you know what these riots compelled the government to do? They had to release him. She got her brother out of jail. And some people are even willing to stand with their sibling when they're in problems locally, when they need some money. That's your brother. That's your sister. That's your khalu. There are sisters who have completely boycotted their brother as if he's a Sayoni. Over what? Something petty. Over like, why did you look at me this way in the family gathering, in the family function? Over what? That's your blood. You've shared a womb together. Wallah, he will die for you. Wallah, she will die for you too. But sometimes egos block. And this is what shaitan is doing. He's dancing in the hearts of people like this. Where they can say, you know Salat al-Rahim? Block it, forget it. Forget Salat al-Rahim. How dare she say that about you? Habibi, let that go. Let bygones be bygones, because Allah makes it clear that on the day of judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, no one enters Jannah if they have a size of a mustard seed of hiqd to their fellow mu'min. Allah says, you two have problems? Yeah. Before you enter, because you both have to enter Jannah, because you both made it, before solve it right now. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, that person who has a feud with their family will not enter Jannah until they solve it. And you'll look at this issue and you'll say, I mean, wallah, how pathetic, how petty. That this small thing is preventing us from entering Jannah. Ya hadhi. Fix it now. Sort this out. Would you be willing to go far that your brother is in jail to stand up for him? Or your sister needs help? Or your sibling needs something medically, financially? You do that for your fellow brother. Do that for your own brother and sister. She got her own brother out of prison. She got him out. Why? Because she used her voice properly here. And she got him out of prison. But guess what? The processions and the protests continued because she started this riot. And she was very extremely popular. And they would ask her, where do you get your strength and source and power from? She would say, I am the daughter of the Risala. That's all. They asked her, are you interested one day in getting married? She says, in this climate, I'm not interested in anyone right now because I do so much. When she went to Hajj, she began to do da'wah to the non-Shia. She went to Hajj. And you know how Hajj, they have gatherings of the Hamlat? She went to the tents of the non-Shia, and the women, she would sit with them, and many of her students, these are known students by the way, her Shia students, Haydar al-Kufi, Al-Hajj Firdaus Mahdi, Haydar al-Gobanchi. These are her students. They would say, in front of our eyes, she entered people into Tashayyu'. She was that charismatic and intellectual. She did so much for Islam. And look at how society repaid her. That you ask some of our shabab and shabat, mashallah. Inshallah, not this group of mu'minun, but barely are able to reference such a historical figure, an honorable figure. Say, I have role models like Amina, Hawzat in Qom, all women houses built in her name, in her honor. Hawzat Bint Al-Huda. We lost something special. Because do you know what happened eventually? This upright scholar, this legend of intellectuality, poet in high caliber, they found it necessary to completely silence her. And it is said very clearly that she almost knew that this was the day she would die. And interestingly, the day she died and her brother died, were killed, would be eventually the same day the tyrant would die as well. It would fall on the same anniversary, on the same day. What would happen is that she would go and have, after the classes were closed, private home classes. She never stopped. She never gave up on teaching. She would say, women, you need to come to the house now because the schools have been closed and I will teach you. She would gather them all, and in the home they would teach. But the problem is, like we have, mashallah, here, the home was too small and the attendees were too much. And this still caught the attention of the intelligence that don't have any intelligence. And they said that her brother and her, we have to end them. And so they took her. They took her, and they recently captured one of the killers, and they gave this person an interview, and he literally said that when we took her away, she was wearing clothing that was underneath her abaya very tight. It's as if she prepared that I'm going to be tortured, so I don't want my clothing to be loose. Subhanallah, Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam did the same thing. Imam al-Hussein, on the day of the 9th of Muharram, Tasu'a, the 9th, not the 10th, he put on clothing that was tight underneath, and he would tear it a bit. They asked him, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ, why do you wear tight clothing underneath your main armor and you tear it a bit? What's the point? He says, because they're going to steal from me on my body. That's exactly what happened. But I don't want them to take away everything. To keep his dignity preserved, they'll see that this is all ripped up anyhow, and they'll just leave it as such. And that's what happened, by the way. They took from his ring. They took his amama. Rasulullah gave him that amama after he was martyred in the plains of Karbala. And they took, and they left him with those same. She, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayha, did the same thing. She's like, today's the day. I can feel it. And they took her, and they took a Shaheed Baqir Al-Sadr. And the reports that have recently came out now, The interview was just done by one of the killers. He was coming back to renew his passport. He lived in Jordan. He came back and they captured him. Said that when I brought her in and her brother, I'll be honest, together, I have never seen a relationship, brother and sister, like this before. That she is so calm. And her brother is reminding her, it's just a couple minutes and I'll see you in Jannah. We lived a good life. One of service to Allah. And one is telling the other, forgive me if I've ever troubled you, my sister. She says, no, you forgive me if I caused any harm to you. The killer says he kissed her and she kissed her brother back, and he ended their lives right then and there. And he took Shahida Amina Bint Al-Huda and they buried her in an unknown spot. Eventually they gave her a mark, a place, and she edged her name in history. And yes, her name is Amina, but she didn't live in safety. Yes, they killed her, not because she was weak, but because she was dangerous. Yes, she wrote with her ink, but that ink bled into the heart of every lover of freedom. And if you asked her, who was your inspiration? She'll tell you it was none other than Zainab and al-Banin. Because it was Zainab and al-Banin who never neglected the most deprived of their society. Shahida Amina Bint Al-Huda would see these women who were abandoned and say, let me teach you. And she had students who graduated to become thinkers to the highest degree and writers and authors. No formal education. Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam in Kufa and al-Banin would also teach the women folk of society. Never ever undermine the value of ilm, brothers and sisters, because Rasulullah says, Talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli mu'minin. He actually also adds, wa mu'minah. And upon every believing woman, it's wajib. A farida min al-fara'id, kas-salawat, kas-siyam, kas-zakat, farida. That's what we call them, obligations. Talabul ilm is a farida. You have no excuse anymore. al-Banin particularly. Because Lady al-Banin, she was a scholar. You always associate her as the mother of Abu al-Fadl, and not so much after that. She was an alima, fadilah, hafidha lil-Qur'an. She was a teacher of her society, and she would constantly remind others the haqq of the imam of their time. She would teach them about wilaya of Ahl al-Bayt. That's why it started from home. She would teach all her sons, Uthman, Ubaidullah, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, my sons, Hussein is your master, not your brother. You refer to him as Sayyidi wa Mawlai. He is the son of Fatima, and you are the sons of al-Banin, Fatima bint Huzam al-Kilabiyya. And that's why Lady al-Banin alayha salam, while she's in the city of Medina al-Munawwara, the family of Ahl al-Bayt are returning back from the events that transpired in al-Sham, and in Iraq, in Kufa. And Imam Zain al-Abidin, right before he enters Medina, he runs, alayhi salam, into Bishr ibn Hadlam. Bishr was a news reporter of society. He would project the news of the day by screaming. That's how they would share information. And so Imam runs into him just on the outside of Medina, the outskirts. He says, Ya Bishr, I need you to return back to Medina and inform them before we arrive about what happened in Karbala. He says, what happened in Karbala? And he sees the Imam and he sees him in a very disheveled state. Imam says, Bishr, when you go back to Medina, don't call it Medina. لأن Medina is the name the Prophet gave it. And that's a beautiful thing to refer to it as. Bishr ibn Hadlam, call it back the name it had in the days of Jahiliyyah. Yathrib. And so Bishr ibn Hadlam went back to Medina after Imam Zain al-Abidin informed him of what happened to his mother and his aunties, his families, his siblings, his nieces, his father, his nephews. And Bishr goes back to Medina and he refers to it as Yathrib. Ya ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha. قتل الحسين فأدمع مدرار الجسم منه بكربلاء مضرج والرأس منه على القناة يدار. O people of Yathrib, there is no place for you anymore, for Hussein has been killed, and for him my tears pour. His body in Karbala on the ground it lay, while his head on a spear from city to city taken away. Bishr ibn Hadlam goes, he sees al-Banin in the crowd, and he tells her, عظم الله لك الأجر باستشهاد ولدك عثمان. I offer you my condolences on your boy Uthman ibn Ali. He fought and he defended Aba Abdullah. She says, I didn't ask you about him. Tell me about Aba Abdullah. He says, عظم الله لك الأجر باستشهاد ولدك عبيد الله. She says, I didn't ask you about him. Tell me about Aba Abdullah. He then continues to name all the sons until he says to her the son that hurt her really bad. عظم الله لك الأجر باستشهاد ولدك عباس. عظم الله لك الأجر باستشهاد قمر العشيرة. She says, you have broken my heart. Tell me about Aba Abdullah. And then he tells her about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. She then rushes back to her home to mourn. As she's there, she then is informed that Zainab has also returned, and she has now returned back to her home. al-Banin goes to the house of Zainab, but Sayyidah Zainab informed her servants, Lady Fiddah, don't let anyone come to us. We want to mourn alone. As al-Banin knocks on the door, she is welcomed by Sayyidah Fiddah, who was the servant of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra. She says, can I see my lady Zainab? She said, but 1 minute. She said, don't let anyone come. But how can I refuse you? You are from us Ahl al-Bayt. Fiddah goes and tells Zainab, if you tell me don't let anyone in, what if the one at the door is al-Abbas? She says, let her in. She is a sharik among us in the Musa'ib. As al-Banin enters the house, Sayyidah Zainab rushes to her. al-Banin rushes to her. Sayyidah Zainab screams out, Wa Abbasa. al-Banin calls out, Wa Husayna.